Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Hope everyone is having a wonderful weekend. In this video, I'm going to be covering several of the altcoins and specifically some of the names that were recently announced that would be added to Coinbase, or names that they are exploring to add. So I'm going to go down, not the entire list, I've already kind of filtered it out. We'll look at some of the stronger names today and how are those looking, potential trades and setups that I'm watching here over the next few days for some of those names. We'll take a look at the Bitcoin chart, see where the price levels are, but no doubt it was a bloody week in the crypto markets. Tons of selling a couple of days ago. We saw a bounce attempt yesterday, but prices still remain very much under pressure to the downside, and most altcoins were hit pretty hard. So we'll take a look at those, but there are a handful of names holding up well. Got to build that watch list if the market decides to find a low here. Always got to be ready to go and have some names if you're trading these. From a long-term perspective, I would recommend taking a look at some of these names. To be honest, Coinbase added a few names that I was kind of surprised. They were just very small cap names. Some of these projects have been around for quite some time. There's some newer ones on the list for sure, but it was interesting to see the list of names they decided to pick here. There's some good ones on the list for sure, some names that I like. Many of you guys have known I've been following a handful of these projects: Neo, Omisego, Chainlink, even District. Pretty interesting projects. Mana, I'm a big fan of that project there, looking at some of those names. But some of these other names here, a little bit smaller cap names, you know, Status, Storage, they've been around for some time, just have not gotten a lot of traction yet. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but we'll take a look at a handful of these charts. But let's take a quick look at the coin market cap here and just kind of get a quick weekly recap. So looking at the total market cap list here, this is the performance for the last 7 days here. So this column here on the right, and just the week was rough. Bitcoin down over the last 7 days, 19% after finding a little bit of a bounce yesterday. Ripple down 18%, Ethereum down 24%, Stellar down almost 30%, Bitcoin Cash down 41%. At one point was edged out by Bitcoin Cash SV. The battle continues. EOS getting a smacking, down 40% for the last 7 days, and you can just see it was carnage across the board here for the last few days. No place to hide for the most part. Even the names that were really strong were pulling in, but we have seen a little bit of a bounce. If you look at the last 24-hour column, there are some double-digit bounces in here. Even though EOS is down 40% for the week, it is up 11% in the last 24 hours. Same with Dash, up 11%. So there's some bounce action happening off of these extreme lows, but no doubt was a rough week in the crypto market space. Looking at the coin market cap, total coin market cap still holding above that $100 billion mark, psychological level, just barely edging out. Came really close earlier, was at around 104 before bouncing here a little bit, currently sitting right around that 108 level. But nonetheless, the downward trend continues. Ever since breaking that major level on Bitcoin at 6K, we've just not seen any sign of a solid low just yet. We had a double bottom attempt here, pretty good little counter trend rally, but that fizzled out, and this week has just been the grind lower. So let's take a quick look at Bitcoin, and then we'll cycle through some of those altcoin names. So looking at Bitcoin here, the open short interest for Bitcoin and Ethereum remain at these all-time high levels. Something to make note of. You could still see the potential for a short squeeze. Yesterday we saw a big rally attempt off the lows. The level to be watching yesterday was that $3,300 level. The bulls were battling it out yesterday in and around there. Finally gave it up. Prices dropped briefly almost to $3,200 before we saw that sharp rally higher, pushing prices back up to almost $3,500 very quickly. And so we saw that big reversal on some very strong volume. So that was the first good attempt. I mean, that was the biggest volume we'd seen here in quite some time off of the lows. So it is significant, something to make note of here, but now the bulls need to defend this level here. So on the 4-hour chart, prices must remain above this $3,300 level. A close below that would really just start to undo this potential reversal candle, this big bullish engulfing candle that we saw. You can see here, since then, prices have been trading within the range of that big candle. But if it starts to close below that 3,300, that's going to really start to negate that reversal action and would likely lead to another leg lower. At minimum, would retest the low end of that candle, which is the wick right above 3,200. So that's the level to be watching on the downside here in the near term. On the upside, notice this blue line here is my 10 EMA, and prices just continue to see resistance right at that level. Even yesterday's strong move rallied above it, but could not close above that 10 EMA and has not been able to do that since. And so first target would be just getting above that on a closing basis. But ultimately, in the near term, I want to see prices close above that 34.75 level. That would start to change the picture. That would start to show some moving out of the resistance. And then above that, the next level is going to be around that 35.50. And you've got a series of resistance levels along the way. These prior support levels that have given way are now going to be resistance on the way up. And so there's going to be a lot of hurdles to overcome if prices can find a bounce here. So 35.50, then above that, around that 36.50 mark, 3,700 was really the level that broke a few days back. And then above that, 3,800. So certainly a lot of levels to be watching on the way up. Near term, I'm watching the support. It's got to hold. That was a good bounce attempt, but the downtrend is still very much in place. You can see here the moving averages are still heading lower. They're still inverted. The shorter term moving average is still below a longer term moving average. So technically speaking, prices are still in a downtrend. This is really the first attempt at putting in a pretty good low since last weekend. So we'll see how this plays out over the next few days. Those are the levels to be watching here near term. But as I mentioned, the open short interest is pretty high. So you could see another potential squeeze if I were short, and I'm not short anymore, but if I were short, I would be nervous here because of that potential reversal. You saw how quickly that happened yesterday. Prices have drifted lower. On the positive, the volume on this drift lower has been pretty light. And so if I was short, I would be cautious here at minimum, have some pretty tight stops in place in case you see a big spike up. So that's the levels to be watching on Bitcoin. Let's take a look at some of these names here that were announced yesterday as potentially being added to Coinbase. So I showed you the list here at the start of the video with some of those names. I've gone through that list a little bit and have kind of pre-filtered out some of the stronger names today. We saw some pretty good moves yesterday. You saw Neo, you saw EOS popping off the lows, but have mostly retraced that entire move. So I'm only going to focus on those names that are holding up here or potentially setting up for another leg higher. And so first on the list is AE, Eternity. If you look at that versus, these are all going to be versus BTC here, because I'm looking at what are those names outperforming Bitcoin. And so you can see this one has had a nice move off the lows, a series of green candles. You found a low here a few days ago and is already up about 22% since then and is edging up on some pretty good volume. Volume is expanding as prices go. And then today we're seeing this little breakout here out of this little range that it was pausing just below. So these little pullbacks to this EMA pair is what I'm looking at as potential secondary entries. When it looks like the low is in and volume starts coming back in, that's where I look to make a trade when I'm making trades based on this setup. So you can see you had a strong rally, pull back on lighter and lighter volume, below average volume, and then you see this green candle here, volume expands again, and it's off to the races again. So looking for those secondary entries is the way to go on some of these names rather than chasing them, because these names are very volatile and you're technically fighting the trend. The market is in an overall downtrend, and so all of these trades, in my opinion, would be considered higher risk, but they are outperforming Bitcoin by a pretty decent margin here. So AE is on the list. The next one is Engine Coin, ENJ, and another one that was added. And you can see here strong rally, nice pullback here, consolidating and about to break out here on this potential resistance. So that's the level to be watching on that 1 hour chart. It's still tracking to the 10 EMA. It's holding it up relatively well. If we go to the 4 hour chart, it is a little bit extended here on this 4 hour chart. And so I'm preferring to buy dips, pullbacks rather than breakouts, just because by the time these break out, they've already started to get a little extended. You're seeing volume contract on this consolidation, which is healthy. It's also allowing the RSI to cool in a little bit, but it is a little bit more of the extended name here, but very strong move off the low here. You can see from yesterday's low up about 20% as well. So something to be watching here. On the daily chart for some of these names, they're just coming right back into a resistance level. You can see ENJ had was setting up here. It was on my list last week and it was just kind of looking pretty good. Then it rolled over. It's coming right back to that zone. So on a daily chart, you want to be paying attention to those bigger picture resistance zones. Where are they relative to current price action? And again, don't chase right into those resistance levels. Ideally, looking for those pauses, those pullbacks, those little bull flag type of patterns are better entry points in my opinion for some of these. But E&J definitely strong, and it's on my watch list right now. Civic. So Civic was one of those names they've already started accepting deposits for, and you saw some volatility here. The volume kicked in yesterday. Zooming into that 4-hour chart here, it's pausing right now, pulling right back to this EMA pair. You can see right there. And so I'm going to be paying attention to this level. Does it hold? This was technically the breakout level. Yesterday, you can see it cleared that resistance on that big volume candle, but it's had a lot of wicks to the upside. So there's certainly a lot of sellers showing up as prices move above that 1700 Satoshi level. And so I'd be watching to see how this plays out today. But it is holding up on the EMA pair. And so I'm watching to see if this pause can just kind of settle out here and volume come back in if prices start to move higher. Next on the list, District probably had one of the strongest moves off of the announcement yesterday. Single 4-hour candle took that price up over 50% before they started to pull back, and it was a quick pullback. You can see how far prices pulled back, down 20% in no time, and have since just kind of been choppy, consolidating in this range, but it's still here in the upper half of that range. So very strong action. It's just pausing, letting these moving averages catch up. It's exactly what I like to see. And so this is the one I'm definitely keeping an eye on here. If it can start to close above this range, that would be considered a little bit of a breakout there. Going to the daily chart, it still has room to run if it can clear this range. It tested this resistance. You can see here this prior support that gave way. The rally paused, couldn't close above that. So that's going to be the level to be clearing. Above that, then that yellow line on my chart is going to be the next level I'm watching. That's around that 478, 479 level. But has room to run in my opinion, looking very strong here, a bit extended on the daily chart. So if it can just sit tight for a little bit longer, that'd be good, but that could provide for another potential 20% to the upside. So District, small cap name, and these smaller cap names are seeing some of the biggest moves only because they're just lower volume. And so if you get any type of volume coming in relative to what they've traded in the past, that's what happens. You see these big rallies, these 50% moves in very little time. So DNT is on the list. Next one up is Kyber Network, KNC, and you can see here this one has paused, pulled back, and the reason I'm watching this is just as it's setting up a potential low. It's not one of the stronger names for sure, but if you look at that 1-hour chart, some volume came in. It is starting to stair step its way higher, so you've seen these little volume spikes along the way. It is pulling back. I'm looking for a potential higher low to be set on this one, and then another leg higher. If we can get above that 4,000 Satoshi level, give or take, then that's going to be the level I'm watching as a potential continuation of this trend. And the big picture, just kind of looking for a reversal off that low. So it's attempting to put in a low here. LOOM, been very volatile here over the last day or so, but again, another big name off the lows. This is one that they're accepting deposits for as well. And you can see we had that big volume spike, rally paused right around that 1460, 1450 level. And so that's the significant resistance level to be watching here near term. If they can close above that, then you can see the next leg up. And I'm also watching this EMA pair down here. You can see that's where we're seeing some support starting to show up. So I'm going to be paying attention to that level today, seeing if that is the support level, and if prices begin to move higher, if volume expands on that move higher, that may be a potential secondary entry for this one. Looking at the daily chart on this guy as well, it is attempting to put a little bit of a double bottom here, and the volume was very strong on that move yesterday. Of course, it was news driven, and so you always got to take it with a grain of salt, but it did change the fundamental picture on this one in the near term, just because it's now in play and one of the names that are going to be added for potential trading. But you always got to be cautious of the sell the news scenario. Once it goes live for trading, how will it react? Will it just get dumped like so many of the other names? In odds favor, that's probably what's going to happen with a lot of these once they start trading. You see that reaction once it goes live. A lot of selling comes in at that point. So one to keep an eye on here near term. It is in play. The volume was strong yesterday, so I'm going to be paying attention to this one to see if it can clear that resistance here in the near term around that 1400 level. Next up on the list was Chainlink. So Link was moving here today. Again, this one is in a broader downtrend. It was one of the stronger names here over the last few months, but has since seen some pause. We'll look at the daily chart here shortly. But this is the 4-hour chart. You can see how strong volume is starting to come in here today. Yesterday had that big move off the lows. It's finally starting to turn the corner, getting above some of these moving averages. And so one to keep an eye on here near term, going to that 1-hour chart. Some volume is coming in here today as it clears this very near term resistance level right around that 6,500 level. And so seeing this one, see if it can hold. If it can hold above that level on any pullbacks, that'd be very positive to see. But on the daily chart, it's going to face some resistance. You can see it's got this head and shoulder pattern in play right now. These moving averages are acting as near-term resistance on the way down, and has just seen a pretty good fall after running for quite some time and seeing a nice rally off the lows since August. I mean, from August to the top here that we saw recently, this one had a 300% move already. And so it has had a good run, and it has been pulling back here since mid-November. So just something to make note of. It is pushing against some downward pressure, some resistance here. So short-term, 1-hour, 4-hour charts look like they're trying to turn the corner. Daily chart still very much under pressure and not very bullish, to be honest. OMG, another one that was on the list yesterday, and this one has been putting in an interesting little resistance zone here. So that's really the level I'm watching. It was on the list last week, and then it started to roll over this week, as many names did. But it's bounced right back and still has not cleared this level. So that's really the level I'm paying attention to, above that 390. But you can see some volume starting to come in here. You see these big wicks to the downside. So as they try to sell it off, some buyers are stepping in there and keeping prices above. And finally, on this 4-hour chart, the EMA pairs are starting to cross back over. And so any move above that 390, a close above 390, would be positive here in the near term and could lead to some more upside potential. Above that, next level I'd be watching is around that 420 level, and then above that 440. QKC, this name has been in play for quite some time already, but it is getting some more action here again near term. You saw the volume coming in yesterday, and it's starting to make a series of higher lows. So you saw that high coming in, it pulled back, held these moving averages, rallying, making a new relative high here earlier today, and is right now pulling back as I record this, and is right back to that support level that needs to be held. So it's something to be watching here, but it is turning the corner again after seeing a pullback from those rallies that it had in November. Had a strong move off that support level in November, has since been pulling back here through December. It looks like it may have found a low there, and now it's starting to turn the corner here on this 4-hour chart. So one of the names that were added to the list and should be watched here in the near term. A couple more here, looking at Request Network, REC. I'm looking at this near-term resistance zone right there. A close above that 620 level would be positive, and it's looking pretty good here. You saw this little tight range, and then during the crazy selling we saw here a few days ago, really broke below, but quickly bounced right back, and it's right back in that range there that it was in a few days ago. So very tight action, something I'm watching here. Hasn't seen a lot of volume yet though. Notice how quiet the volume has been on this one. So if this pushes through this resistance zone, I definitely want to see some volume come in to help confirm some of the conviction behind that move there. But it is one of the names that is being added and is holding up relatively well compared to some of these others. So I'm keeping an eye on this one. Tezos, another one, lower volume name, XTZ. There's a ticker on this guy. Is turning the corner here a little bit. So this is XTZ versus Bitcoin on the Kraken exchange. You can also chart it on Bitfinex. So just something I'm watching. Again, lower volume name, but it is trying to turn the corner here on this announcement. And so one I'm going to be watching here. And finally, ZIL, one I'm just watching here in the near term as it's attempting to put in a higher low. So it may have turned the corner, needs to confirm though, has not seen any confirmation to the upside. You can see it paused right here, this prior support level. We saw that pullback, and that's where the rally has paused here yesterday, bouncing into that resistance now. And I'm watching this pullback here to see if it forms a higher low, and that may signify a potential turning of that downward trend. But near term, it's got to get above that resistance level. So closing above that 412 to 413 level would be positive here. So Zilka on the list right now. And last but not least, this is not one of the Coinbase names that were added, but I am watching Tron here. Let me clear some of these. And Tron has just been stair-stepping its way higher here after breaking out from this little pattern here, a little ascending triangle base on this 4-hour chart. Saw some volume coming in as it pushed, and it's just slowly grinding higher. Not a huge move, only up about 3 or 4% from that point, but still looking pretty good. One of the names that are stronger names that have been holding up relatively well in this recent selling. And right now it's facing a little bit of resistance around that 390 level. So one to keep an eye on here. Going to the daily chart, you can see just big picture, it's trying to put in a little bit of a low, seeing some good volume come in. If we can get above that 390 level, then next level up is around that 410 to 420 level is going to be the next target to the upside. So Tron is definitely on my list right now. So that's going to do it for today, guys. Just a quick altcoin review. I appreciate you guys watching. Remember, be patient. This market is still very much under pressure right now. So for those of you that are trading, I always recommend in these environments either wait for the better setups or just trade small, keep tight stops, all that good stuff. But for now, we'll see how these names on the short run work. Important levels to keep an eye on for Bitcoin going over the next couple of days, so watch those two. But until next time, we'll see you guys Monday. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend. Talk to you later.